Hey guys, welcome back to St. Isidore's Farm Channel and this 6th video in the series on Successful Fathers by James B. Stinson. The topic for this segment is Successful Fathers Keep Television Watching to a Minimum. That pretty much says it all. Successful fathers keep television watching, and I would argue computer use, tablet, smartphone use, video game use to a minimum. When Stinson wrote this book, I think it's slightly older, television was the main media influence in the lives of young people and in the homes of the families that he was looking at and writing about. And since that time, technology has exploded. Computers and smartphones especially have really transformed the lives of teenagers. So I'm going to read this pretty quickly. I've already shot this video. Well, I shot it once. It went long. I tried shooting it again earlier, and that just wasn't gonna happen. So taking another crack at it this evening. So here goes. Successful fathers keep television watching to a minimum. They realize that TV steals time from the family's life together. It squelches conversation. Whenever something worthwhile is on, the family, or most of it, watches together. Otherwise, the screen remains dark and the children constructively occupied, talking, playing games, reading, studying, making the most of the few years they will spend together as a family. Since curtailment of TV's babysitting functions means more work for mom, then dad pitches in to help. Under his leadership here, the home is more active and consequently healthier. Boy, so very much that I would like to say on this subject. When we moved to the farm several years ago, it was not to, as much as we are interested in an agrarian lifestyle and self-reliance and the possibilities for gardens and livestock and hunting and all of those things, the primary issue was more geared around our family life, and particularly our children, and what we were seeing in our children, and also what we were not seeing in our children. Friendships, influences, the way they really lived their young lives. And one of the things we did when we moved out here, among many others, was to cut the cord. We got rid of cable. We have an antenna, it's in the window back there, that allows us to get some local TV channels, the news if we needed to, watch football games, which is actually my wife more than it is me. But really the TV stays dark most of the time, and we do have access to Netflix and a Roku box and those things, but as Stinson points out, more often than not, it is if we are watching something, we watch something together, and access to the TV shows and movies is very limited. And the same with the computer and other media forms. So, this is a huge topic. I mean, this really could be a 30-minute or an hour-long video to try and discuss all of the challenges and the things around, and what I see increasingly in the young people that I'm working with, particularly with children who have unfettered access, parents that allow their children to have televisions and computers and video games, and of course smartphones in their homes. You know, a recent study just came out that said children ages 13 to 18 years old are on average have 9 hours of what they call entertainment media screen time. So that is television, internet via their computers, video games, and smartphones or tablets 9 hours a day. That's more time than they're spending in school. It's more time than they're actually, most of the kids are spending asleep, so that they're spending more than a third of their day engaged. And that actually doesn't include screen time for schoolwork and the things that they're having to do, write papers, etc., that are interacting on the computer. 9 hours a day. That's sort of the most recent studies that they're looking at with kids. Contrast that with many of the students, the young people that I've worked with or have had the pleasure and the privilege of knowing via friends and families who have simply gotten rid of TVs. They don't even have TV in their home, or if they do, it's not connected to an antenna, it's not connected to the internet. It might have a DVD player, and they might watch some movies or rent movies occasionally to watch. There is a real difference in those young people. They're just, I don't want to say they're better kids, but your ability to engage and interact them is quite different as an adult. And that's important, I think. And so then what do you do? As Stinson says, you find other things for the young people to do, to read, to play games, to go outside. The studies of what you talk about, what is it? Louvre wrote the book, The Last Child in the Woods, Saving Our Children from Nature Deficit Disorder, that in the book, when he even interviews and talks to people in the book and says, why do you not like to go outside? And it says, because one of the kids very truthfully and honestly said, because there's no receptacles outside. There's no plugs for the devices. And that makes me think, the other, oftentimes reading or suggesting other books on this subject of TVs, lots of things you could read, but Neil Postman's Amusing Ourselves to Death has to be one of the most prophetic, and he works off of Aldous Huxley and Brave New World in a lot of this book, but he is prophetic in his looking at television and media. Made me think of this one part near the end of the book. He says, Postman says, but it is much later in the game now, and ignorance of the score is inexcusable. To be unaware that a technology equipped with a program for social change, to maintain that technology is neutral, to make the assumption that technology is always a friend to culture is, at this late hour, stupidity plain and simple. It's a great book. Don't want to end up doing two different book reviews, but on this subject of television, John Sr. also writes about it in A Death of Christian Culture, as have many others. Can't stress enough, I think, parents, please, 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 fathers especially, be vigilant about this. And it goes into, you've got to also practice what you preach. One of the things that Stinson points out in another part of the book is the challenge that young men, especially young boys and children, don't have the privilege of seeing their fathers working anymore. Because fathers work outside of the home, they work 40, 50, 60 hours a week. They don't get to see virtue exercise, their fathers working with other adults, etc. And then when they do see them, they come home, and what do they see their fathers do in some cases, in perhaps many cases in this country, is that they sit down and they watch TV, or they're on their computer doing potentially work, but to their kids it just looks like they're interfacing with the laptop. I'm as guilty of that as anybody. I mean, my job, my work carries over in email, and so having to be vigilant about that. But, what does it lead to is, as Stinson would point out, is talking to young people that when he asked, what does your father do? They said their perception is my dad sits and watches TV. And if you think about that, if that's what they're actually seeing, the only time they see you and they don't see you working or doing other things or engaging or playing games, but you're just sort of absorbed in watching football games or very passively engaged in this thing, that's a huge problem. I think there is much that has and can be said, but a lot of the social media it's very passive. It doesn't require much from the viewer, not in the way that a book does, not in the way that games do, not the way real human interaction is. It's very passive. It just, again, it can belabor the point and go on about this at length. In my own children, I'm blessed to have seen that from a very young age, our oldest kids, they would prefer to read books, and they're not, I think, kids that somehow seem disconnected from the world. I think most people that interact with them think they're really lovely and engaged kids, but they would prefer to spend time making art, sewing, knitting, reading, talking, doing, engaging, versus just sitting around mindlessly absorbed or consumed by technology. So that's it for this one. Again, successful fathers keep television watching to a minimum. And I think that's it. It's not to say perhaps even that it's a completely bad thing. Entertainment, when it's intentionally chosen, so to say, let's watch a particular thing, movie or show for a particular reason. And look, this is a place where I think, Netflix is terrific with all of the documentaries, Amazon Prime, other things that you're able to very intentionally go on and sit and, the boys and I love to watch, and YouTube as well. I think as long as it doesn't become a thing where one just rather mindlessly, endlessly sits there watching one video after another, after another, after another, like a slow drip, but to go on, subscribe to particular channels of people who, the content you find interesting, valuable, educational, etc., to seek those things out, watch them. It is great because you don't have a lot of the commercials and other things via this media. It's one of the somewhat exciting things about YouTube is that you can really choose the content, the person who's delivering it, and you get spared largely clicking through ads or things that are on there. But that can be, again, to sit there and say, my son and Isaac is at an age where it's like he's really starting to enjoy going out into the outdoors, learning about bushcraft and survival and things like that. And so it's cool to go and subscribe to people's channels and see those things and watch shows that are very specific to that, or even to particular things that he's interested in. If you want to learn about bow drill techniques, then you can find videos specifically on that. So again, it's not to say that the media and the technology in itself is bad, I think, but to choose intentionally to limit it, and then when you do engage it, to engage it very intentionally. So that's it. I hope this has been helpful, that this series continues to be of some help to folks, and I'm enjoying going through it myself and to get a chance to reread this and to think about some other things. So that's it. Oh, the dogs are coming. Have a great evening. God bless and good night from St. Isidore's Farm.